Hey girls, welcome to another episode of our awesome show. Today's guest is pretty amazing. Her name is Aimee Raupp. She is a licensed acupuncturist and she specializes in helping women with their pregnancies. She has authored 3 books. I love it. Chill Out and Get Healthy. Isn't that awesome? Yes, you can get pregnant and Body Belief. We had a great conversation. She is a world of wisdom and we talked a lot about energy. So let's go and say hi to Aimee. Welcome to High Energy Girl, a podcast helping women to age stronger because it is never too late to get fit, be strong, and feel sexy. I'm your host, Tracy Gluheich, health coach and personal trainer and founder of highenergygirl.com. Each week, we will either have a guest interview, which will provide you an actionable tip to help you age stronger, or I will do a solo episode that we will have a fun challenge for the month. Please also join our Facebook group, High Energy Girls. Looking forward to seeing you on the inside. Hope you enjoy the show. Guess what, everyone? My book is out. It is a revised and updated edition of a book I wrote 5 years ago called No Frickin' Way, 21 Days to Ditch the Diet and Lose Weight the Keto Way by Loving Yourself to Health. When I first wrote the original book, I was not a believer in the low-carb movement, but after all the years of research I've done, I am sold out for life. In this book, you will learn about all the lies you have been fed, how to engage in loving self-care, how to eat nourishing foods that provide massive energy, why the ketogenic diet is not a fad, how to heal your body through fasting, why you should move your body to get stronger, and how to create an empowering mindset. Start reading now and finally achieve the high energy and positive body image you deserve. Check it out on Kindle, on Amazon. And if you like it, please leave us a review because this will help more people find it. I really want to inspire people to not deprive themselves, but to nourish themselves with loving self-care and amazingly healthy food so that they can age stronger. Thank you so much, and I hope you enjoy it as much as I enjoyed writing it. Hey, Aimee, thanks so much for coming on the show today.
Thank you, Tracy. I'm excited to be here.
I am excited to have you because it's very rare that I'm able to speak to another literal high energy girl. And I see you do a lot of energy work, and that stuff really interests me.
Mm-hmm.
So for the guests or for the listeners that don't know you, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Well, I am by trade, I'm an acupuncturist and a practitioner of Chinese medicine, and I've been in clinical practice for 15 years, mainly in the New York region, New York City, New York State. I've also written 3 books. My first book came out in 2009. So really all the books are about, for women and on their health and how to optimize their health. I wrote a book called Yes, You Can Get Pregnant, which is all about optimizing health and fertility. And my most recent book is called Body Belief and is about your belief systems and how they impact your health and your thriving, mainly as it pertains to autoimmune conditions. And I give, of course, nutrition and diet and lifestyle recommendations that are really weaved in with traditional Chinese medicine principles and theories. But before I became an acupuncturist, I was a research scientist. I was a neuroscience, researcher, biology, chemistry. So a real science nerd, if you will. And so now in my current life, I love to mesh both worlds, but I'm really fascinated and have been a longtime student of people like Abraham Hicks and Joe Dispenza, reading books like The Biology of Belief, things like that, of how our beliefs impact our health and our ability to thrive. And that this isn't just a theory. There's a lot of scientific data to support that. And I get into that in every one of my books. I've been talking about this conversation since 2009 in my first book, Chill Out and Get Healthy. But, as I've evolved as a practitioner and as a human, I start to really see that unless we work on the energy and the beliefs with which we live our life or from which we live our life, that's where we can have the most lasting changes.
Yeah, and I totally believe that. I'm taking a class right now because I'm a lifetime learner, and It has to do with the subconscious mind and how the subconscious mind controls like 90 to 95% of our awareness. And so we need to really focus on exactly what you're saying, on our belief systems in order to attract what it is we really do want, which in your case would be healing, right?
Absolutely. And I think too, I talk about this in Body Belief a lot of, we have upwards of 50,000 or so thoughts a day, and they say 90% of them are the same. So we can really tap in our thoughts, as Abraham Hicks says, a belief is just a thought you keep thinking, right? It's something you think into your reality versus its actual truth, right? It's what we believe to be true, but it's not necessarily true. It's true from our perspective. And so that might be a lot for people, to swallow, but I'm assuming on this podcast, possibly not, because you have these conversations regularly. But just this idea that if 90% of our thoughts are the same every day, then what we need to figure out is, what are those thoughts? What are we believing about our everyday interactions, from the food we eat to what we think about our body, to what we say when we look at ourselves in the mirror, to our relationships, to our money, to every aspect of our life, and see where those beliefs are actually manifesting into physicality, right? And that you have, the best thing about beliefs is that they're changeable. And so you can, as I always encourage, and I take this from Abraham, is how can you say it better, right? So it's not about going from black to white, like, if you don't believe in that you have to work really hard to make money, or, whatever it is, or you have to work out 8 times a week to get to the body weight that you want. But how can you adjust that to say it, rather from black to white, to just say it a little bit better, that, okay, if I support and nourish my body on every level, then it should come into equilibrium. Or I do love my body the way it is right now when it does X, Y, and Z. And you start to soften this conversation and thereby soften the beliefs, which then will actually shift the trajectory of your life and your health.
Yeah, that is very true. So how do you do that? How do you recommend people being able to control that, that talk, that 90% of their self-talk?
You gotta first, I have a whole protocol in Body Belief, but here's the gist of it. You have to first identify, right? So I call it the art of shifting your beliefs. It's an acronym, ART. The A is for acknowledge. The R is for renew or reform. I kind of use those interchangeably. And the T is for transform. And so the key step, and if you look at any spiritual teacher that we know of or follow these days, from like Deepak Chopra to Gabby Bernstein to Eckhart Tolle, Abraham Hicks, Joe Dispenza, they all have this acknowledge piece as being the primary piece. And they call it either witness or, to see, to understand, to feel the feeling behind it. So you have to first acknowledge. So you need to spend time reconnecting. So the first pillar of my book, Body Belief, is reconnect. And I believe that until we do this part, we can only achieve a small amount of what we want, right? We could force ourselves to change our diet and things of that nature, but the root of what we need to do first is that reconnecting. And when you reconnect, and you can do that many different ways. I mean, I believe meditation is one of the best, or journaling, but just really living in your body again, befriending your mind and soul again, or for the first time. It really depends on the person. And starting to hear the conversation. So a good exercise is, look at yourself in the mirror, and what are some of the things you hear yourself say to yourself. Identify what is your, as I call it, your elevator pitch when it comes to your health or your well-being or your financials or your relationship. What is the first thing that you usually say to someone? And those will reveal your beliefs to you. And you have to sit with that acknowledgement first. And then from there, what I recommend is writing them out, getting as clear as you can. So really spending days to a week or so, just observing, trying not to judge, but just observing. Oh, every time I look in the mirror, I point out that, whatever, my thighs are jiggly, or, whatever it is, or I hate my eyebrows, or my skin is terrible, or, every time I think about money, there's a clenching in my heart, and I go to this place of fear because I feel like there's not enough, or every time I think of my relationships, I think of how lonely or unsupported I feel, whatever it is, and start to really identify, massage out those beliefs, write them down. And then in the renewal/reform space is when you sit with them, and all you do is you say to yourself, how could I say this better? And I think a good way to imagine what that means, or to understand what that means, is, how would you say it to your closest friend or to someone you care about? Because a lot of times we put a little filter onto other people, and to ourselves, we're very raw and critical. So, how would you start to say that, in a slightly better way versus like, for instance, if you look in the mirror and you're like, I hate my skin. It's so gross, or whatever, whatever that conversation is. Could you just say, it looks better this week than it did last week, or I am really learning and understanding that when I do X, it does flare up my skin, right? So this way of just kind of curiosity, looking at yourself with curiosity, compassion, understanding, versus these like very rigid and often critical thoughts/beliefs. And then you start to just live in there, and you start to see things transform all on their own. The transformation basically just happens on its own as you start to hear the beliefs, and almost, I encourage you to talk back to you, if you will, right? So when you say something so critical, it's this, I do it all the time, where mine is always about moving too fast, or, haste makes waste. It's something that like I was raised with, that, that my father would say to me, because I was always extremely speedy and needed 18 pots boiling at the same time. And I've learned though, to love that part of myself, right? Like that's who I am. And I love her. And she's, that's why I have 3 businesses. And that's why, I've written 3 books and run a thriving practice. Like there's really good pieces that have come out of that. But when I'm in that, like, I drop something, or I spill something, or I send an email too fast, like I react, right? Versus respond. Then I say to myself, okay, Aim, just take a deep breath. Let's slow down. Sure. But I'll hear in my head, the first thing I'll hear is like, it's because you were moving too fast. You weren't paying attention to the details. And I start criticizing myself, right? And instead, if I take that pause and I respond rather than react, I actually say something very compassionate and supportive to myself, which then soothes me. And, it actually brings me to be more present and grounded. And so it's a real self-awareness tool. And, I think you can look at the state of the affairs in your life and get a good gauge on, are you super critical of yourself, or are you super supportive? And the places that you're thriving is where it just feels easy to you, and you believe in yourself, and it's automatic, and you support yourself. And the places where you're not thriving is where you need to work through some of those beliefs/criticisms.
That is awesome. I love what you just said, because that is so true, right? Like you need to focus on like your natural ability. Like I'm the same. I burnt artichokes the other day. I mean, who burns artichokes? It's like that whole thing about like just doing too much. And I love what you also said. It's just, I really feel for me that is who I am. And I told my husband, we've been married 29 years, and he's just like complains about me doing that kind of stuff and just being that way. And I'm like, well, do you want me to be more like you? And he's like, oh no.
That's it. So it's like, yeah, I think as we grow more and more comfortable in our own skin. So I feel like in today's society, we're so easy to disconnect. We're so easy to judge ourselves because of, especially in the world of social media, the grass always looks greener. We're never doing it as good as someone else on Instagram. You know what I mean? And it's just like, it's easy to be even harder on ourselves, comparison is the root of all suffering, right? Buddha said that however many thousands of years ago. And it's still really true to date. And so, in that awareness, in that acknowledgement or witnessing of ourselves and of our thoughts, my hope, and believe you feel the same way, is that we just learn to love ourselves, like our perfect imperfections, or, whatever it is, our quirkiness, and explain ourselves from that, that arena. I mean, that's, the authenticity that you can then share in your relationships of like, yeah, I know I did that, but that's a part of me that I'm still working on. I said that to my husband this morning. We had a little fight yesterday, and it was like, I'm working on that piece. And, and sorry, I do get judgmental when it comes to, whatever he had. Like, I was away for the weekend and he went on like a Chinese food binge, and I come home and he looks all bloated and puffy and he's complaining about his stomach. And I'm like, well, what do you expect? I don't know what to tell you. But I was a little harsher in my words. And so, I said, you're right. That is a judgment piece that I am working on because, to me, whatever it is. And so to learn to have more self-compassion and to just witness ourselves and actually start to be able to laugh at ourselves a little bit and, become friends with ourselves again, because we've created this, at least a lot of people. And again, I've worked with, I feel like thousands of people at this point, behind closed doors, where they really share their deep, dark secrets, physical and emotional. And most everyone I come across is their own worst critic, right? And we could all use a little more not to sound cliche, but self-love, self-compassion, self-friendliness. Mm-hmm. And when we do that, we just kind of soften. And I think our world starts to soften. And then we start to understand, like, maybe we're not exactly where we want to be, but that we're exactly where we're supposed to be. And to trust in the unfolding of that, which is, is work, even for, I think you could probably say the same, Tracy, but like even for us who've been on this spiritual path longer than others, it's always going to be, it's not about reaching some, perfection state. It's really just about witnessing and being loving and kind to ourselves.
Yeah, we've never arrived.
No, and we never will.
Yeah.
Right. And that's okay. Right. It's, I always think of Abraham, where she's like, if you go to the buffet and they have every single food that you love, you would get really bored really fast. Like you need the contrast, is how she kind of says it. So meaning you need like the hiccups in your life to get clearer on what it is you want. And it's not to say that you deserve problems or trauma or bad experiences, but more that you can get to learn to, you can begin to look at those events as learning opportunities. And yeah, a lot of us deserve a lot less learning opportunities than, some people have had, I think, way too many, but how can we kind of soften that perception and not judge it so harshly that it's wrong, or that we did something to screw it up, or that we blame somebody else in our life or an event in our life, and, rather look at it as, a learning experience and a means to find more compassion for ourselves.
And in doing that, in being an expert in that area, what are some daily habits that you do to, get yourself continued growth and continued practice in those areas?
I really think it's the honesty piece, like really being honest with myself and seeing where, sometimes I'll go into, I won't curse on your podcast, but the F it mode, where it's like, screw it, what does it matter anyway, right? And then I'll beat myself up for it later. So now it's that witnessing of when I get that urge, where it's like, I literally just ask myself, like, how does that support you? How is that driving you in the direction of your dreams? And, another thing I'll do a lot is in my meditation or after meditation, and I'm not always perfect. I try to meditate every day, but, it looks different every day. Sometimes it's listening to a guided meditation. Sometimes it's 5 minutes. Sometimes it's 20 minutes. Sometimes it's listening to a guided meditation while I'm driving. So I'm not fully in the meditation. It just depends. But I ask myself after some quiet time, how can I better support you? How can I better nourish you? And I really listen to that answer. And so, it's life has its challenges for certain. And SHIT happens, and I don't think that's gonna change. So it's not about avoiding that. It's about how do you roll with that and how do you respond versus react. Like I do think, I heard Terry Cole, I don't know if you know who she is, but she did a lecture once on meditation, and I heard her say what meditation has given her is a 3-second pause. So she basically has gained these 3 seconds in her life before she responds to anything. And in those 3 seconds, it's really just gathering the information and the world around you and responding from like your heart center versus reacting. So for me, I feel like that's the biggest piece. And it's witnessing every day, like just before it was like, oh, I'm hungry. Should I eat now? And I'm like, how how do you want to support yourself? And I was like, I'm going to sit and make, this big bowl of healthy, yummy food and take 5 minutes to cook for myself and eat because I have a busy day, So rather than in the F it mode, it would be like, I'll eat after. And then, I'd be kind of like emaciated and starving on this call with you, So how can I better support you? What am I doing to support my end goal? And how am I living, in alignment with the vision of the life I want?
Mm-hmm.
So I really try to stay true to that. And I'm not always true to that. I definitely have moments of reaction. I'm definitely not perfect, but I'm also a fairly new parent. I have a 3.5-year-old, and
Aww.
I really, he's so sweet. I really take that seriously, which I think every parent does. But from the perspective of like, I know he's learning from my reactions and my behaviors, not my words. So I really take that seriously. I heard Brene Brown say recently, and something I listened to of hers, I love her. And for all you parents, her Gifts of Imperfect Parenting lecture is amazing. But that she said, it was something like the child is painting and they spill and you're like, oh, not a big deal. Everybody makes mistakes, right? So you try to be really supportive and you give them paper towels and they clean it up. And then the child is watching you cook and you burn your artichokes, right? And then you're like, Jesus, Christmas, I can't believe I did that, and you're like really hard on yourself about it. And she says, what do you think they're going to learn from more? And they're going to learn from you and how you react to your mistakes versus how you react to their mistakes. And that just has stayed with me. So, I'm around him a lot. And, and so he gives me this gift of being present and really aware so that I can teach him through my actions. Like, that to me is, part of the whole fertility thing that I do and helping women improve their fertility, I always say, is not really about helping them get pregnant. It's about making the world a better place, because so much of what I do is teaching women to reconnect. And when they are reconnected, then, you bring that into the home and you bring that into the child that you're raising. And I do firmly believe that will help make this world a better place. So to me, it's like, that's a huge part of what I do and why I do it. And I try to practice what I preach. I have moments, of course, that are not ideal, but he helps me stay really aware and present, which is a huge gift.
That is awesome. So you have a 3.5-year-old. By the time I had one that was 3.5, I had one that was, 2 and 6 months.
Yes. You were busy. You weren't as present.
I wasn't as present. And it's like, I'm really close with my boys. So like my oldest lives in Bed-Stuy in New York.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
So he's in Brooklyn. He calls me every morning.
Oh, pumpkin. How old is he now?
He's 25. That's Marco.
Oh.
And he's awesome. And my middle son, Nick, lives down in Southern California. And he calls me every day after work. So even though
you did good. You did good, Mama. I love it.
Thank you. That's exactly my point. Like, I screwed up so much stuff when they were little, but I'm so blessed that now they are, we have these great relationships.
Well, and it's also like, to your point, it's not about screwing up or not. It's about the recovery. It's about and I say that. I said, oh, James, Mommy, I got upset with myself because I made a mistake. And, I'm human. And I did this Mother's Day post about my mother that got amazing feedback on social media. And, I'll talk too much, I might get emotional, but like what I said was, what she taught me was to be human. Like she didn't teach me about perfectionism. She didn't do it all right at all. Like I saw the good and the not so good, but what she taught me was to be human. And she's still my best friend. She's 71. I travel with her. I love her to pieces. We talk every day. And that's, I think that's the bigger picture. And so it's even like understanding our own humanness, like being easy on ourselves and not being so harshly critical, because, if we're talking about kids here, our kids are going to pick up that, right? And so if we can soften the way we respond to ourselves and our interactions in the world and just start to say it a little better and be a little kinder and a little more compassionate, I do feel like that's the root of it.
Yeah, and that is exactly like so I saw on your website something about Qigong, and part of my Qigong practice is sending kindness and benevolence into the world.
Oh, I love that. I love that.
There's this quote. It says, like, so at the beginning of the Qigong practice, it's take kindness and benevolence as basis, take frankness and friendliness to heart. And then the rest of it that you say at the end is speak with reason, treat with courtesy, act with emotion, and accomplish results.
So
that's it. Yeah, that's what I love. I just love the whole idea of, when I teach yoga, it's like when we close it out, it is, closing out with think happy thoughts, say kind words, and then you put your hands to your heart and then speak with compassion for yourself and for others.
Yes, yes, yes.
So,
that's it.
Do you do Qigong and yoga as well?
I do yoga. I do Qigong. I think I have my own kind of, how would I say it?
Form.
The word invisible is what's coming to my mind, of like my own invisible practice. Like when I'm in the clinic treating clients, for certain, I am practicing a form of Qigong in the means of the energy I'm transmitting to them and the energy I'm taking from them and transmitting back into the earth, right? I really see myself, and I do it too. I mean, I coach a lot online, and then I'm in the clinic 2 to 3 days a week, depending on the week. So I do it coaching wise as well, where, it's like a breath exercise. So very much, and I love Qigong. I'll do it on occasion, but as far as like a regular practice, there's more this energetic practice of like, how can I serve, right? How can I be this vessel of guidance and hold space for someone? And how can I also not take on their stuff, right? And even I was doing I'm in a mentorship program, and I was studying with my mentor this weekend, and she said something really profound of like, when we're doing acupuncture, that it's like, oh, this patient needs more, X, like, whatever it was, chi or blood or wood energy. And to think of like, and the world has so much to give, and like that you're like energetically giving them from the earth, from this greater universe. And so, the practice of acupuncture, like that art in and of itself is so much about Qigong, right? And, so yeah, those are the things that I kind of unconsciously, I think is the right word, unconsciously do all the time, and even if I'm in a certain conversation where I can just separate myself, if you will, like, or I would do a protective barrier. That's Qigong. We were taught that in acupuncture school, and so, but lots of breath work, yoga. I'm a runner too. Running is a really, clarifying experience for me. So, where I'm putting energy out and taking it in, I'm super conscious of.
I miss running. I used to be a runner. I loved it. But being bow-legged and pigeon-toed is not conducive to a very good runner.
Not always, right.
So did we cover the T?
So as I was saying, I said it before, but the transform almost basically takes care of itself when you just start to live in that renewal. You just start to see your life, your beliefs, your compassion towards self transform. So yeah, it's almost an automatic. Okay. But the transform is really just living the talk and walking the walk, if you will.
That's awesome. But it all starts with your thoughts. I love that.
Yes, it really does. Because it's, people will come to me for nutrition and supplement information and lifestyle, how much exercise should I do to manage this health condition type of thing. And I say this in the beginning of Body Belief, and I say it, and yes, you can get pregnant as well, but it's like, I could sit here and I could give you the exact diet that I think is perfect and the exact exercise plan and the exact supplements. And it's not that I don't really do that in the books, but you got to work on this mental emotional piece, because if you don't, then you're basically just saying, oh, I'm going to follow this diet to get pregnant because that's what Aimee says I have to do. And then you basically start to resent me if it's not working, versus if you get rooted and connected to yourself and say, like, how does this nourish and support me? How does this support my end goal or my vision or my dream? Then it becomes your choice versus something I'm force feeding you, right? And so that's where you really see those transformations, is when people, I visualize it that I'm just a guide, right? A vessel to help you take back the power over your health. I don't have the answers. I have some answers, sure, but because I've been educated around certain things, but you have your answers. My job is to guide you back to your answers, right? That's all of us, I do think.
I love that. And I feel that's so true. It's so funny because I just got Reiki level 2 certified Saturday.
And I get Reiki too. I do love Reiki. I get Reiki and acupuncture regularly. Yes. My other forms of taking care of myself.
Yeah, me too. And it's all like, I'm 53. I'm going to be 54 this year, but I don't want to ever stop learning. Like
yes.
I would love to do what you did and go to a traditional Chinese medicine school. And that's like one of my dreams. But I got this thing. So do you know who Glenda the Good Witch is from?
Yeah. Of course.
Okay, so it's like a really cool picture of her, and it says, "You've always had the power, my dear. You just had to learn it for yourself."
Yeah, I love that. I agree, and that's it. It's, I've mentioned her like 3 times already, but I listened to a lot of Abraham, and I had a long drive home from Massachusetts yesterday, and I was listening to a recent lecture. Abraham Hicks is who I'm talking about.
Yeah,
and that's exactly what she was saying. She was like, what does your reality-based self think about the situation? And what does your source-based self think about the situation? And you should be living your life from the source-based self. You know what I mean? Like this thing of like, you have the power to choose. You can, she was talking about basically like opening up the valve to receiving what we will want. And she said the only thing preventing that valve from flowing the way you want, like, so from basically the block between your desires and what's manifesting in your world is your beliefs. And so you can go and change those beliefs. You can shift it, and you can then open that valve more or close it more. Based on what you're believing. And so it's just that of like, you have the power here, which is a lot for people to take in sometimes. And it does sometimes also feel like then we're blaming you for where you're at or not at, or how you're suffering. And so I don't want it to ever sound like that, but more that you have the power to change it is how I want you all to take it. And that life does happen, and how can we be easy on ourselves about where we are, but also instead of disliking where we are or really taking, like resisting it so much, it's, Eckhart Tolle says this, like the second you accept it and just own it, this is my life right now, the easier it's going to get.
Yeah.
You let go of that resistance and things will begin to flow. And so, again, it's not about like, yeah, maybe you made these mistakes when the boys were younger, right? Because you had your hands full. But really, you must have, though, in your own way, taught them that it's okay and that you're human, and you didn't harshly judge yourself. You know what I mean? Because you didn't create a distance or resistance. And, everybody's going to go through their own life the way, they need to. But that you have this level of acceptance, and you probably laughed at yourself a lot. You probably rolled with things, you know what I mean? Or like, that's just probably what they got from you. Right. And you see that in the lighthearted nature, but again, it's just not about perfection. It's just about like witnessing, accepting, and just being easy on yourself.
And I love how you said laugh at yourself. Like, I love laughing at stories of things that the kids remind me of things that I did when they were young. Like, here's a funny story. So I was a dancer growing up. I even taught Zumba, years ago. But so one time we used to have a lot of parties when the kids were young because they'd always want all the friends over and all the families over.
Yes.
One time Marco had a new friend over, and I was dancing on our counter. Like, we have this huge kitchen. I was dancing on the counter, and Marco's friend goes, "Marco, I think your mom's drunk." And he goes, "No, she does that all the time."
No, she's just happy on life.
She just likes to dance. That's funny. So yeah,
it's
laughing at. So now the book that I read from Abraham Hicks, because you referred to that, is Ask and It Is Given.
Yeah, that's a good one. That's a really good one. I also listen to I'm a subscriber on their website, and I get their downloads twice a month of their recent lectures, because they basically travel the world and do these in-person lectures. And I love those. You can go on YouTube, listen to anything for free, just around here. It's amazing. There's a ton of stuff online. But the book Ask It Is Given. The first book I ever started with was The Vortex. Someone had given it to me on CD, and I listened to it in my car. That's how long ago. And that was, it was right around the time my father was sick and passed away around that time. And it was the most helpful thing, I could ever use around my grief or understanding his transition, if you will. And my sadness and, my fears around that. Like, it was the perfect time to have been introduced to Abraham. And, it's been such a transformation since then. But, I can't say, I tell everybody about Abraham Hicks. And, it either works for you or it doesn't. But I just think their interpretation of life and how serious we take it when we really shouldn't is beautiful and helps. It just helps you soften your thought processes and your beliefs. And it really helps you start to witness, like, how am I interacting in my world and how am I playing a role in how my world looks right now?
Yeah. And it's true. And I think, so I think that, some people think that Abraham Hicks and all the other things that we believe are kind of woo-woo, but you can't argue with the power of placebo. And I'm sure you're familiar with the study they did where they did the knee surgery study.
Yeah.
I mean, that to me, so for the listeners, it is basically what they did was they did a knee surgery study and half of the patients had the knee surgery and the other half did not. They opened them up and they pretended that they did it, but they did not do the repair. And when they followed up with them like 15 years later, the results and the pain level and all of the, aftercare or whatever was the same, right?
Amazing. There was a similar study with diabetics where they gave half of them a pill to regulate their sugar and half of them a placebo, and did blood work before and after. So we're talking like an hour difference, and every one of them, their blood sugar went down. So all the people that took the placebo pill had lower blood sugar. Yeah, it's fascinating. I talk about placebo effect and nocebo effect quite a bit in body belief, and the research is mind blowing. And they do say like 15% of all medicine is placebo. And I think the more care you get from your practitioner, the more impact placebo has, to be honest, because it becomes this more of an emotional relationship and you start to feel like, oh, I'm supported, I'm not alone. And, you basically don't really need the medicine. I mean, there's this woman up at Harvard, Alice Domar, and she created support groups for women trying to conceive. And what she witnessed just with women showing up once a week or twice a month for a support group, no treatment, no intervention. They just supported each other around trying to conceive. The pregnancy rates doubled.
Wow.
Just support. So it's, it's a really cool statistic. I talk about it a lot, and yes, you can get pregnant, but women in support groups get pregnant twice as fast as women who are not. And I see it too with the online community I created. I mean, these women just run the community. I'm just kind of a bystander and answer questions, but they support each other in this beautiful way, and you see the transformation just through that. So, I mean, you could call that placebo in a sense. I mean, I think, not entirely, but the power of the mind is, you cannot argue it. I mean, you follow Joe Dispenza. If you want like that kind of Abraham Hicks approach mindset, but with a real science background, Joe Dispenza is your guy. He talks physics. He talks, just molecular interactions and literally how our beliefs change our entire reality and how you can have an impact. And you read his story too. It's fascinating. I mean, he was like run over by a car and was told he's never going to walk again. And, he's a fully functioning human, and he's not just walking again. He's like completely thriving. But yeah, Abraham can be a little much for some people because it is this quote unquote spiritual entity and this channeled by this woman. It's a little interesting. I love it. I've been on stage with her. And I am an energy person, and it's a real powerful energy that comes out of her. I almost passed out when I got up on stage. Because I think I'm so sensitive to energy, but I made it through my hot seat question. That was great.
Oh, that's awesome.
I would have been mortified had I passed out.
You know what? It's like, here's the thing. There are so many things out there that we don't understand and we don't know. Mm-hmm. And even within our own body and our own brain, we use such a small fraction of it, yet it's there for a reason. So I think people live so far out into the conscious realm, and most of where we are is in the subconscious. And I love what you said earlier about asking your questions that you do in the morning, like the power of questions, so that your subconscious can actually find the solution to the question or find the answer. So that is super important.
So important. I agree. It's really listening and tuning in or reconnecting, as I say, in body belief. And in that reconnection, is the acknowledgement and getting on the same page with your body and your mind and figuring out how you guys can work together versus, battling each other all day long.
Oh, yeah. And you have like a special, like a program that goes along with body belief, don't you?
I do. It's called Reboot Your Health and Rewire Your Brain. It's a 30-day mind-body transformation. Oh, but you know what? That runs a couple times a year. But I think maybe what you want me to talk about is actually my free 5-hour digital course that goes with body belief. Sorry. Yes, that is anytime for anyone who purchases body belief. You get, if you go to aimeeraupp.com/book gift, I think you could put it in the notes. You get a free 5-hour digital course that goes in conjunction with the book. And then if you do love the book, we have a Facebook group, and then we do run these like about 4 times a year. It's a 30-day program, mind-body program, where you get daily email support from me, you get menus, meal plans, recipes, and we work on food and feelings every single day. And so it's a complete mind-body reset. And my community loves it. We're in the middle of one right now, and I love it too. It's really fun, and you feel great. Your body changes, your health improves, your mindset improves. It's really putting the body belief program to work. So it's awesome.
Oh, that's so cool. You do it twice a year?
We do it. We try to do it 3 or 4 times a year, actually. So every quarter, basically. But the digital course is for anyone, anytime they buy Body Belief. And then I created this 5-hour digital course. There's Qigong, there's some recipe cooking, there's lectures from me. I do a whole piece on shifting beliefs. So that's really nice for anyone who just wants to make a small investment. You buy the paperback for $15 and you get, this free 5-hour digital course from me. And then there's a bunch of resources as well that go along with it. So you get access to a lot of information to help you put this all into place, from the comfort of your own home.
Oh, that's awesome. And then you spoke earlier about nutrition. That's so when you said that you help people with nutrition to get pregnant, what does that look like exactly?
I mean, I could be really general, I suppose, because I do try to individualize it based on the client and what they're going through and their age and their, history. But, generally speaking, I believe food is our first and primary medicine. And from a traditional Chinese medicine perspective, which is my training, we're meant to eat food as close to its natural state as possible. Mm-hmm. So, and food cooked more than raw and animal protein, so I tend to recommend a diet that's a lot of vegetables, a good amount of healthy fats like ghee or coconut oil, avocado, nuts, and then, a couple ounces of protein a couple times a day. So 3 to 4 ounces, 2 to 3 times a day of fish or meat or eggs, and keep it really simple. So avoiding any processed packaged foods. We say if it sits on your counter and it doesn't go bad, you should not consume it because it's dead. It does not have any chi or life force, and it will do nothing for your chi or life force. Mm-hmm. If you want to create a life, you need to have some good chi in your body. And bone broth is a big, and has always been, I know it's a bit of a fad right now, or very trendy, I should say. I hope it sticks around. But I've been talking about bone broth, for 20 years, right? Because it's the basis of, to us in Chinese medicine, if you want to restore life or create abundant, energy in your body, then eating things cooked down from bones is very important. And so for any woman trying to conceive, we need an abundance to have an overflow to give up to grow another life. And so having regular bone broth is a big part of that.
So do you make it yourself or do you buy it?
Both. I found a great place. If you go to aimeeraupp.com/bone broth, There's these guys called the Brothery. They're in California, but they ship anywhere in the U.S. and they make it with like filtered water, and they do it just right, like the Nourishing Tradition style, which is a huge, like a Bible to me as far as a nutritional book goes. Sally Fallon is the author of that, and his broth is incredible. And it's packed, like cooled down and then packed in the BPA free plastic containers. Like he thinks of every single potential negative influence and treats for it, if you will. So that's the broth I will buy for home, but I also do make mainly my own chicken broth or fish broth. I don't really like to cook. I don't know. The beef bones are just a little too many steps for me. So I typically buy my beef broth.
Mm-hmm. Have you tried Epic?
A batch. Go ahead.
Have you tried the Epic brand?
I have. I don't ever like to talk badly about anything, but the taste, it just isn't. If you want good tasting broth that you're going to love, I think the Brothery is the place to go. If you're in New York City, Brodo or Springbone are amazing. I'm sure there's amazing brands throughout the country at this point, but Epic is good. Kettle and Fire is good. Like, I think they're made somewhat properly, but the taste isn't as good as it can be. And then also, I just did a Facebook Live recently with Chef Lance from the Brothery, and he talks about the differences in what they do versus what all the other packaged bone broth companies do. And it's just worth a listen, right down from the water that they cook it in, that it should be like, he uses like the cleanest of waters, which is really important. Right. And he even makes an autoimmune paleo 1/ a low FODMAP broth for sale, which no one else does, meaning it's made without garlic and onion. That doesn't exist on the market at all. He's the only one who does that. So if anybody has those FODMAP sensitivities, that's phenomenal. And if you do, you know who you are, because you know what I mean when I say FODMAP.
Yeah, I know what that is. Hey, so are you talking about the one that you had on your website is the one that makes that FODMAP one?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay,
yes,
cool.
The brothery.com, or you can get there through Aimee Raupp /bone broth, and you can use promo code REBOOT10, and you get, is it 10? Reboot 10 or Reboot 20? And you get, we'll have it right for you. I'll get it to you so you can have it in the notes. And you get the percentage off of your order, which is great.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I love bone broth. I usually make it myself. I'll just buy a couple organic, healthy chicken, cook it up, eat that night, use the rest of the meat for salad or whatever. Oh, that's what I'm asking.
Exactly.
Why mostly cooked vegetables instead of raw?
So we just say, this is a Chinese medicine theory. It translates in Ayurvedic as well, but that's about it. That eating raw is harder for your body to digest. It takes longer for it to break it down. Whereas if it's partially cooked, not necessarily overcooked, but your greens should be like slightly wilted, or at least if you're eating a salad that it's got a cooked protein on it, or the dressing has like some ginger or, some garlic in there or a clove to kind of warm it up. Or you're drinking it with a hot beverage. But too much cold raw, especially as it pertains to fertility, can make the uterus cold. And we say a cold uterus is inhospitable. So that's just Chinese medicine theory. But I see it across the board, because I'll get girls that are having a hard time conceiving, and they're doing like juices. I'm not that I don't do juices. I just try to add a lot of ginger and turmeric to them when I do it. Or if I make smoothies, I add ginger and cinnamon to it, right? So, and I try not to have anything frozen. I typically will blanch my greens. So it's not like you can't do a smoothie. It's just there's a couple little steps that I have you implement. But you'll see digestion radically change. You'll see skin clear up. I mean, because it's hard to digest, then we say like phlegm will accumulate in the body. And you'll start to see those types of symptoms, from like cysts on the ovaries to, cysts in the skin, painful periods. And so the uterus just really craves warmth. And, that's like, I have a whole section in Yes, You Can Get Pregnant about the 10 ways to keep your uterus warm. And that really, like, that alone will improve fertility. And so we basically have like an 80-20 rule. Obviously if it's the middle of summer and, you're in a hot, humid place, you can eat some cold raw then, right? But like my period started today, and I won't walk around barefoot. Like, it's to that extreme. Like, it's 80 degrees out here right now, and I will have my slippers on the whole day, because walking around barefoot, especially on cold tiles, is just really, it makes the uterus cold, and it will make my period more crampy.
Interesting. I should tell that to my son's girlfriend. I want my uterus cold because at my age,
You're done with it. Yeah.
I'm done. My youngest one is 22 and a half. So yes, I'm done. Yeah. But it's interesting that you said all that, because when I was, one winter, like I love salad, like that's my favorite food ever. And one winter I was eating salad all winter and I kept getting canker sores. And my friend who was in Chinese medicine school, she said, because you're eating cooling foods in the winter, you need warming foods in the winter. Yes. And that's when I stopped eating salads in the winter, is because they were so painful. And I don't think I've had a canker sore since.
Yeah. Isn't that amazing?
There's something to it. So Aimee, I have so enjoyed our chat, and I know that that time is up for you, but is there any wisdom you want to leave the listeners with today?
I think just to, be easy on yourself. If there's one thing that you can start doing now is just tuning into how you treat and how you talk to yourself, and just find a way to be your own friend again, or for the first time, because you deserve that.
Mm-hmm. I like that. Be easy on yourself, for sure. And it's funny that you said that, because I was at lunch with my Reiki master, and okay, this is kind of, whatever. Some people might not know how to take this, but she's like, okay, put your hand out as we're finishing. And she, brings her Reiki power hands over my hand. And she said, you have an aunt that passed over. And I'm like, no, my aunt didn't. And then she's like, well, it doesn't have to be a blood aunt. And I'm like, okay, yeah, my husband's aunt did. She's like, well, she's here in the restaurant. And the crazy thing is she went to that restaurant all the time. And she said,
no way.
I swear, this is so true. And I was in tears. And she says she's telling you to stop being so hard on yourself and show yourself the same love that you show others.
There you go. And that is it. That is the freaking key.
Oh, I love it. Awesome.
Yeah.
So how can our listeners find you, my dear?
Well, you can go over to aimeeraupp.com. And you can find everything about me there. You can follow me on Instagram. That's one of my favorite social channels. I do lots of Insta stories, and it's Aimee Raupp. Or you can follow me on Facebook as well. I do weekly Facebook Lives and Instagram Lives every Thursday at noon Eastern Time. And we're always talking about different interesting health, emotional, mental topics. So my community loves that. And it's one of my favorite ways to share my information. Yeah.
Well, I'm going to definitely stalk you, girl.
Oh, well, thank you.
And we'll have live links in the show notes page so they can find that as well.
That sounds great. All right. Okay. Sounds good.
Well, thank you so much for coming on the show today, my dear. You are just a breath of fresh air.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you for all the work you do. I appreciate it.
Oh gosh, I absolutely loved Aimee's vibration. I hope you could feel that across the airwaves. And I just want to thank you so much for listening to our show today. I hope that you were able to pick up many little pearls of wisdom. She is an awesome lady, and you can find those direct links she mentioned on the show notes page at highenergygirl.com/show. So if you like the show, please share it with a friend and head on over to iTunes. Give us a rating and review so that more people can heal their bodies by listening to these amazing guests and all of their juicy wisdom. All right, so thank you so much, and we will talk to you on the next show. This podcast contains the opinion and thoughts of its host and guests. It is intended to provide helpful and informative material on the subjects covered. All statements made on the podcast have not been evaluated by the FDA and are not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent disease. If the listener requires professional assistance or advice, please contact your personal medical doctor. Both host and guest specifically disclaim any responsibility for any liability, loss, or risk, personal or otherwise, which is incurred as a consequence directly or indirectly of the use and application of any of the contents of these episodes. Like I said, this is my opinion and I could be wrong.